Now let's talk about the playoffs themselves, Logan. We're going to preview two series, starting with the one that was set in stone first and is probably the most exciting first round matchup, or at least the one that we know for sure is going to happen at this stage. Clippers Mavs. We talked about this one on Jason's show, Hoops Tonight. You guys can go back and listen to that conversation we had, or you can just stick around and hear what we have to say here. What's your first key to this series, Logan?
My first key is very simple. It's just how do the Clippers match up with one of the best offensive players on the planet? It's very simple, but Luka Doncic just creates easy offense so effortlessly. I mean, the one thing that I'm really focused on is, one, the different combinations that they throw at him. Jason mentioned this on his show, and I think it's the inevitable conclusion that we're going to reach in this series is it's going to be Kawhi Leonard most likely on Luka Doncic, or it's going to be Paul George. Like, they just have to step up and lock him down. And I think physically they can match up with him, but there's no really taking away a guy that has so many counters and so many things in his bag. And especially, too, man, when the Mavs just have Luka standing at 35 feet away from the basket, they give him a high pick and roll, and it's like, go figure it out, defense. Good luck. Like, once that guy sets the screen, if it's Lively or Gafford, they are then effectively running full speed to the hoop where your center has to fully drop back. We've created space between Luka and the wing guy. Luka's going to get to the elbow. He's either going to pull the shot. Your help side guy is going to drop. He's going to kick it out to the shooter in the corner. He's going to have a wide open three. Or your center stepped up on Luka and he throws a lob over the top. That action creates such easy offense for Dallas because Luka is the man. And it's just going to be a nightmare. Like, you got to figure out how to deal with that and how to slow down Luka, man. Luka 8 on every team this year. We know his stat line, but specifically against the Clippers this year, he put up 34 points per game, 6 boards a night, 7 assists a night on 52, 32, 74 splits. They threw everybody at him.
That's actually a rough showing for Luka. Those are below
Yeah.
the averages. If Luka Doncic did that, his averages would go down.
Literally, his averages would go down. If Carson Breber lost in Trivia Gauntlet, his averages would go down, man.
True.
They put Kawhi on him. They put PJ on him. They put Big Zoo on him. They put Terrence Mann on him. They put Russ on him. It didn't matter. Luka 8 on everybody. So, again, to state the obvious, the first key, how the hell do you slow down Luka Doncic? Can Kawhi or Paul George really affect this guy at all and wear him down? I mean, that's the one thing I think maybe we have seen a little bit in series, Carson. Like, do you think that, what do you think about, like, Luka's conditioning? Like, do you think the Clippers can really wear him down, like, in a 6-7 game series where he's got Kyrie to lean on this year. Do you think they can tire him out over the length of an entire series? Do you think they can get him tired to the point where maybe he has a off game 5, off game 6, just because he's so worn down from having such an offensive burden on his shoulders?
I think Luka is one of those dudes who is just built to carry an exceptional offensive load. I mean, he's one of the highest usage players in league history, and he's done that year after year after year, and we've seen him consistently hold up at a pretty incredible level throughout these playoff series. The one thing I would say is, if you want to try to target him defensively, make him work on that end as much as possible. Like, that's a way to put even more of a burden on him. But in terms of carrying that load offensively, he's just kind of built for it. He's going to control the pace to the exact tempo that he wants. He is built for these physical environments. The guy's a tank. And he really is like one of the most exceptionally difficult offensive players to take away, just because there's so many different actions out of which he is entirely dominant, and so many different ways in which he is entirely dominant at this stage in his career, right? He, out of pick and roll, as you mentioned, gets to the paint at will, and then he's an unbelievable touch shot maker, shoots like 55% on floaters, and can make every pass, lob passes, skip passes. He's just phenomenal. And now he's the best as a three-point shooter he's ever been. So in isolation, he can bully most defenders and get into the lane, or he can kill you with those step backs. He can attack mismatches out of the post, all the while being able to pick you apart with whatever necessary pass. Like, the man is just effectively unstoppable. So sometimes when a player is of that caliber, the best thing you can do is just force the ball out of their hands. And generally, I don't think that's the best thing you can do, because basically allowing any offense to just play 4-on-3 is a very perilous game. But I am leaning more and more towards the idea that the Clippers should mix in a heavy mix of traps and blitzes on Luka here and force the Mavs to beat them with their spot-up shooting. The Mavs average 1.1 points per possession on all Luka pick and rolls. That's an exceptional number. When teams have trapped him, though, that number drops to just 0.89. So that is a huge difference in terms of the offensive efficiency. And that's not a Luka thing. Like we've seen in recent years, the Mavs have actually become more efficient when you trap Luka, which is the case for a lot of great offensive players because they make the right decisions and they put their teammates in positions to attack with a full 4-on-3 advantage. But I think it's the drop-off in spot-up shooting where Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington have their moments, have their stretches. They're not the most consistent spot-up shooters. And when I mentioned this and we were on with Jason, he made a good point as well, I thought, which is that if you keep setting those traps and therefore you start to deter Luka from wanting pick and roll at all, like let's say if those guys just aren't knocking down those spot up jumpers, or if he just gets tired of constantly having the ball forced out of his hands, you force him into more ISOs against Kawhi Leonard, who is like as well built as anybody to guard him in single coverage. Elite perimeter defender straight up, but also the sort of guy who has the strength to hold up against Luka in a way that a lot of people can't. So that's a tough matchup. So I have a bunch of faith in Luka getting what he wants, but I think blitzing him and making the Mavs beat you with their spot-up shooting is going to be key for the Clippers in this series. And if those shots are falling, well then, tough luck. Nothing you can do. But if they're missing, then you've opened the door in a way that you might not be able to playing Luka with these traditional coverages where he's just more comfortable.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good point. Like, the Clippers might get burnt a couple of games, but that's the key, right? You're playing the percentages, and that might be the best avenue to steal enough games, because that's a goal, man. You're not trying. Obviously, you're trying to win every game, but it's like ideally, you just need 4, and if you can have enough of those off shooting nights from PJ, from Derrick Jones Jr., who aren't the most reliable shooters, you open something up. And you're taking him away. That being said, Luka finally does have one of the best co-stars of his career in Kyrie Irving, which opens up a different dynamic where you also got to slow him down. Kyrie is, the perfect, partner in crime for anybody on offense. Another interesting aspect on the other side of the ball is how dominant Dallas's defense has been since getting Gafford in Washington. They're the number 1 defense over the last 15 games. They've got a sub-110 defensive rating with Daniel Gafford and P.J. Washington. And I think they've got a good pair of wings to throw at PG and Kawhi. I like P.J. Washington. I like Derrick Jones Jr. I think Kawhi and PG are going to get whatever they want. I just have that faith in them as offensive players. If Kawhi is healthy, playoff Kawhi is a different animal. He is a different beast. I think he's going to get where he wants. I think he's going to do his thing. I think Dallas provides a good deterrent, but it's Kawhi and Paul George. And Paul George has been on a heater. He has been playing some of the best ball of his career. So those guys are going to eat. Then I turn to the next 4 guys that I really think are going to swing the series. What do we get out of Norman Powell, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden? I think those guys are crucial offensive factors in swinging the series for LA. I think they need red-hot shooting from behind the arc alongside Kawhi and PG. And then I just think they need Russ and Harden to pull their weight. And those are 2 really big swing factors for me. They're just variables. I honestly, Carson, at this point in the season, I think I might have more faith in Russell Westbrook pulling his weight and doing his job more than James Harden.
Harden.
I'm very out on Harden. I've mentioned this on every show, and I've read these numbers on every show we've done mentioning this series and the Clippers. James Harden's been horrible. 16% top of the key, 33% on wing threes, 31% on the corner, 27% on catch and shoot attempts, 21% on open threes, and 31% on wide open threes. If you're getting that James Harden, I think he's unplayable. I think he's a negative defensively, and then I think you're getting a guy who is a 0 offensively. And sure, Harden can set the table. There's a different level, man. When you are that much of a non-factor scoring the basketball, it's like, why am I putting you on the court? Man, I might turn to Bones Highland in that situation.
My God.
I don't want Bones Highland minutes, man. But if James Harden is doing that for you offensively, why are you even out there? He's got to pull his weight, man. And I know he's going to be matched up against a lesser defender because that's just his role now. He's the 3rd guy instead of being the number 1 or the number 2 guy. But Harden's been horrible. And if this is the version that we get out of him, I'm that much more confident in Dallas pulling out the series. Like I said, Kawhi and PG are going to do their thing. But to me, it's about Powell hitting his open threes. It's about Russ doing his thing. And it's about Harden hitting open looks. Again, I will reiterate, Harden is shooting 21% on open threes, 31% on wide open threes, and 27% off the catch. Like, that's just a horrible off-ball player, along with a guy who's lost a ton as an on-ball creator. He doesn't explode. He doesn't get downhill anymore. He does not create rim pressure. He does not create advantages. He stands there and goes, yeah, I'll shoot this pull-up three. I'll shoot this step-back three. He's got one shot in his bag, man. And so, because of the attention that Luka demands, like, here's the thing, like, because Luka creates such high shot quality for his teammates may not be as offensively talented as the Clippers' depth, but he's going to create wide open looks for those guys all game long. If it's Green, if it's Exum, if it's Washington, if it's Derrick Jones Jr., if it's Kleba, whoever, those guys are going to get great shot quality and great looks. Kawhi and PG don't create those kind of advantages. Like, Harden is still going to have to create some of those shots for himself, and he's going to have to hit the open looks, which he hasn't been doing. So, I may like the Clippers' offensive punch and their depth more, but they've got a lot more weight on their shoulders, where the Mavericks' role players, their roles are really simplified. That's the beauty of playing with a Luka Doncic, of playing with a Nikola Jokic. Your role becomes so simplified where you got to defend really well and you got to hit open shots. And I just think that the Mavericks role players are just more well equipped to do that than the Clippers. I may like the name brand of the Clippers depth a little more, but I trust the Mavericks role players to just do their jobs more.
I prefer the Mavs offensive formula, and it does start with Luka. He's just one of those absolutely ridiculous players who is so great as both a scorer and playmaker that he gets you a good shot no matter what. And when I propose that the best strategy is probably to trap and blitz him as much as possible, it's like the battle's kind of been lost at that point, because it's really hard to guard 4-on-3. Like, that's the reality. That is just saying, man, this guy is so damn good that we would rather allow you play offense with an extra man than just let him go to work on us. And then Kyrie has been playing at such a great level as of late. Over his last 10 games, 27.5 points per game on 66% true shooting. So I think the Mavs offensive formula is fantastic. And even though I think the Clippers defense has sucked for a couple months, they are pretty well equipped to guard the Mavs because they have good perimeter defenders. I think those perimeter defenders mostly just haven't cared because they're in their early mid-30s and they had already locked up a top 4 seed in the playoffs. And it's not abnormal to have some fatigue at that stretch of the season. Now, they do have to dial back in pretty quickly here, and I don't think they're the best defense, but I think they're solid there. What's interesting also is the challenge that the Clippers offense presents, though, because Logan, you can diminish James Harden. I know you don't believe in the guy whatsoever. He's been awful as of late. We have still seen stretches of this year where he is a very impactful offensive player because he is so smart as a playmaker. No, don't do that. Don't do that. We have seen stretches this year that's undeniable where he's an efficient scorer.
Carson, are you
arguing
arguing
your third perimeter defender, and he's able to torch those guys in isolation? One of the biggest problems has just been that he can't make these pull-up jumpers that normally he makes quite efficiently as of late. Like, I don't want James Harden to be the guy who I'm basing my offense off of at all because of his issues as a rim pressure and rim finisher and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You just take things too far sometimes, man, and then you look at me like I'm the crazy one. You're talking about taking Bones Highland over James Harden.
What I'm saying is this is a really big sample size, and it's like shooting is a rhythm thing. When you are in rhythm as a shooter, when you have a good game, I'm not saying it's an 100% thing, but normally when shooters are hitting, you're hitting the next game. Your shot is just dialed in.
I am concerned about James Harden. You're talking about him like he's an absolute bum.
He kind of is at this point. He's washed. Harden's washed, man.
Dude, I think you are understating the potential impact he at least can have in this series. And what I think is interesting then is how do the Mavs get their best combination of defenders on the floor? Because you have two good wing options. PJ, 6'7", 230, 7'3" wingspan, springy athlete, has been defending quite well in Dallas. I think he's a good matchup for Kawhi. Derrick Jones Jr., a little bit slighter, but also very long. I think he's a good matchup for PG. And this is another thing we talked about, Jason. Then how do you handle James Harden? Maybe with your starting five, the primary matchup is Kyrie Irving, which is okay. I think Kyrie would fare all right in that matchup. But there are some other ways to try to go about it. You can try to basically play Zubac off the floor, go small with Kleber at the 5. Really not that small. I mean, you're still decently big in the front court. PJ at the 4 and Kleber, who's 6'10" and stout, at the 5. That, to me, would be an absolute win for the Mavs if they can do that, because if both these teams go small, then the Mavs are getting their best perimeter defensive combination on the floor. Then, I mean, they have a real 5-out offense. They have shooters everywhere, but they're also just bigger in their small ball configuration than the Clippers are, who I really don't like in those looks very much in a post-Nick Batum world. But I am not so confident that you can play Zubac off the floor. And again, it's not like Kleber is small for a 5, but Zubac is just huge. And I think he's going to be able to go over the top as a lob threat in those looks out of pick and roll. I think he can abuse some post mismatches there. He's a 92nd percentile post score there. Is like the second best paint touch shot maker in the league in terms of efficiency, only to Nikola Jokic. I think he presents a problem on the glass there. So if the Mavs can go small, I think that is a winning configuration for them. But if Zubac doesn't allow that to happen, which I think he's probably going to make it tough, I think he is probably going to punish the Mavs with his offense and rebounding. Dante Exum is a very intriguing option, in my opinion, who I wish we had talked about more. And I think he works in various configurations. First of all, he can just be like a Derrick Jones Jr. replacement, because if Derrick Jones Jr. isn't making a shot, well, Exum brings you very similar size and point of attack defense, but then has been a 49% three-point shooter this year. So he's just a guy who I trust more to knock down those open looks. Or if you're looking at these staggered lineups where you have either Luka or Kyrie on the floor, I think he presents an awesome option as like the point of attack defensive guard and spot up shooter alongside them. So then no matter what, I mean, in that case, if it's Exum and PJ and Derrick Jones Jr., if you do have to match up with the Clippers' big three, you have good options to guard all of them. So I feel like Dallas has the personnel to guard the Clippers. They've been the better defense as of late. I feel like they have the more unstoppable offensive formula with their two stars. I mean, a top 3 player on the planet and a guy who's been playing like a top 15 player in Kyrie. That's just so dependable. And I have more questions about the Clippers. James Harden, big old question mark. Is Kawhi Leonard healthy? Because healthy Kawhi in the playoffs is a bona fide, damn near unstoppable superstar. Since 2020, or since 2019, he's 30 points per game on 63% true shooting in the playoffs. He could be the best player on the floor. All due respect to Luka, Kawhi is that great, especially when you consider his defensive impact. He could still be the best player on the floor. But we just don't know if he's going to be healthy. This is a concerning time for him to be dealing with injury. And I've said this a few times now, but last year, you get Kawhi for 2 games against the Suns. He's kicking everybody's ass. He's outplaying KD. He's outplaying Book. All you get is 2 games. Bye-bye Clippers playoff chances. So the Mavs have been humming, man. If you take out these last 2 games where they haven't played anybody, they're 21-7 since the Gafford and PJ Washington trades. They're 4th in offensive rating, 6th in defensive rating. They've been so much better as a rebounding team, so much more athletically capable in the front court. To me, they're still the second best team out west. So even though I think the Clippers are really talented, and if they dial in and Harden doesn't shit himself, this should be a hell of a series. I'm going to take the Mavs in 6.
I'm also going to take the Mavs in 6, and I think James Harden is the X factor. Like, he is just the ceiling raiser for this team. If he is hitting open threes, if he is hitting his pull-up threes, if he is setting up his teammates for success, I think the Clippers can win this series. I just don't have that faith in them. And I do think, I said Bones Highland, there's 3 other guys. I mean, if Harden isn't hitting, put Norman Powell out there. Put Terrence Mann out there. Put Russell Westbrook. Try something else. But, you know, again, you're killing your depth advantage. Like, that to me is the key. I think James Harden has to pull his weight and has to do his thing. He hasn't shown me ever on the playoff stage that he could do that, especially not this version of James Harden that we have seen.
We've also never seen him with so little responsibility, though. We haven't seen him as a third option.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, shooting's a rhythm thing, and if his jumper hasn't been hitting for the past 20 games, I'm not going to expect just the switch to flip. And I'm not saying he can't have a great game. I mean, damn, man, Harden had what, 250 pieces in last year's playoffs?
240 pieces, but yeah.
240 pieces. I'm not saying he can't get hot for a game, man, but consistently, he's been a letdown. And yeah, so for that reason, I'm going to take Dallas. I think Dallas has been the hotter team, the better team, and I think they're better on both sides of the floor. So, and I think they got the best player on the floor, man. I think Luka's going to ball out. So, I'm also taking Dallas in 6.
I don't think it's out of the question that there are stretches where Harden is just shooting you out of a game or he's just a non-factor, and then it's like, all right, let's get some more value somewhere. And Russ is probably the most intriguing there just because when you have like high motor Russ, who we saw against the Suns last year, was playing as hard as I've ever seen him, doing the little things, defending. Like, people always talk about, oh, Russ always plays hard. And I think there is generally a conflation between this guy is super athletic, so he kind of has to be going with the ball in his hands, pushing the tempo. Like, it looks like that guy is quote-unquote playing hard. But if you're not moving without the ball, if you're not defending hard, then you're not actually playing hard. And that's been the case for Russ for a vast majority of his career. But last year in the playoffs, we got a Russ who was playing hard. And just because of his athleticism, his ability to pressure the rim and play make, like, I can definitely imagine that there's a game where you'd rather close with him than Harden. I'm not optimistic about Harden. I am not optimistic. He has been bad. I am just not going to write him off as convincingly as you are and say, oh, he's a non-factor. He's going to suck. There's going to be volatility there. When the pull-up jumper's falling, though, it's like he's a good offensive player.
Yeah, and when it's not, he's shooting, pull-up jumpers early in the shot clock, long rebounds, kind of shooting yourself in the foot. And the one thing about Russ, too, man, Russ is a confidence guy. Russ is one of the most rhythm and confidence guys maybe ever. Like, you could see it in his play in LA, right? Where he just crumbled. He was a shell of himself. Washington, in a rhythm, in a flow, the leader of the team, playing good ball. He's got a well-defined role here. I think he believes in himself. I think he's confident. I think he's been in rhythm. If Harden is shitting his pants, I would turn to Russ. I mean, the options aren't great, but I would turn to Russ.
Yeah. I like how it's such a real possibility, almost a given, that James Harden is going to shit his pants. That's the verbiage that we've both used. So it's Mavs in 6, accordingly.